last year we had 44 teachers that made over $100,000. You don't have a good school without a good principal, right? And so we need good principals, and so happy to share the work that we've done to help other districts retain their best principals.
Big thanks to Practice Plan for allowing us to use their booth today. If you are needing revenue in quick and efficient manner, you need to reach out to Practice Plan. Easy, seamless facility rental. Thank you to John and the team for allowing us to be here. Welcome back to another episode of The Path Forward. We're here, Austin, TASA Midwinter 2025. I have a longtime friend, but first-time guest joining me, Interim Superintendent, Ector County ISD, Dr. Keeley Boyer. Keeley, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I had to twist your arm.
You did. Actually, you said, please don't say no. And I did think about saying no.
Did you really?
Had you not said please, I might have said no.
We have known each other for long enough, or I was going to try to use that to like, you can't, maybe she can't really tell me no.
That is true, because when I read that, I was like, okay, I'll do it, Rick. I'll do it. Remember at first I was like, well, let me check. I was like, okay, I picked a time slot. So,
awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So for those that may not know, talk a little bit about your career path and all the places you've been and some of the work you've done.
So started as a high school teacher in Texarkana, so my hometown. Taught there for a couple of years and then ended up going to Houston ISD. Taught high school, coached volleyball and softball, then moved into administration. And so I was an assistant principal at Lamar High School for a total of 6 years. So my last 2 as associate over instruction. Then transitioned to principal, middle school principal. That's when you and I got to know each other.
Yes.
I was on the far west side and you were on the north side. And so spent 4 years as a middle school principal in Houston and then transitioned to principal supervisor. And then moved out of state. Got an opportunity to go work in Oregon as a regional superintendent. And so took a little detour out of Texas and went to Oregon for 3 years. And then back to Texas. So been in Odessa and Ector County ISD for the past 4 years.
Okay, so what did you teach? Which class?
I taught world history and U.S. history.
Which was your favorite, world or U.S.?
Honestly, I liked them both. I think U.S. because the window of time the time period was shorter that I taught to where, world was like the beginning of time until like the Cold War.
Yes.
So I felt like you were rushing through it. So I think the time period of U.S. history I liked the most. But also liked 11th graders. They were my favorite, I think. 10th graders were fine, but I liked 11th graders, a little more mature. But I did like the time period that I covered.
Would it shock you that I loved the freshmen because that was my maturity level for most of my, well, it probably still is, but.
Wouldn't shock me at all.
I loved the freshmen. They were just wide, just blown away, and you could kind of wrangle them, but they were just funny and silly. So I got to ask about Oregon. So big switch, Texas, Oregon. So talk a little bit about the differences in how they do school.
I think the big difference is their assessment system.
Okay.
You can opt out of. And so when you can opt out of state assessments, not that I have love state assessments by any means, but when you can opt out of them, you can't really use them to inform instruction.
Right.
And so the majority, especially of the high school kids, would opt out. And so it was very hard to get really summative data or data to inform instruction just because of the opt-out. Also, what we would see is, the kids and families that opt out were our educated families that knew they could opt out. And so the academic performance on state standardized tests wasn't necessarily reflective of learning mastery. So that would be one thing I think was different. Other would be teacher unions and labor unions and, having a teacher contract that was over 100 pages. And, literally having to flip through a contract to find answers to things. And so lots of bargaining and negotiation. And so very different in terms of boundaries, parameters, expectation for teaching and learning.
That's interesting. So a student I'm assuming there was a process to opt out of the test. So how many kids would do that within a school? Like, would it be all of your kids at senior level are like, nah, no thanks, we're good?
Some.
Really?
There were some high schools that would have a 90%, 95% opt-out.
Wow.
So it's just very different when you perspective on standardized testing to allow it to be optional. Now we as a district, we did MAP. So we did have some formative assessment along the way, but really your state summative It just wasn't a true reflection of student learning, but then you're held accountable to
Oh,
that.
okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah, that could see how that could go off the
mhm.
rails real quick. So you've got kind of an inefficient way to look at student learning, and then you're trying to get a good understanding of how schools are performing, but yet it's a very small sample size of students that are actually taking the test. So, what did you learn from that experience about, like, okay, does it mean we need to have real time, immediate type of testing and data so we're not having to deal with
Yes.
all the autopsy reports, as
Mhm.
I like to call them? Like, what are some of the takeaways from that experience?
Basically what you just said is the need for formative assessment,
Yeah.
um, that so you can get a true really measure of student mastery, essentially every kid, every grade level. And so luckily we were doing map, and so we had map data to really drive our instructional practices. And so just making sure that you always have that, right? And you're constantly, um, I wouldn't say assessing, but determining
Sure.
mastery, so that you can inform instruction and make decisions.
So, like coaching, you're practicing every day, but you also get a feel of, all right, did we improve with our skill set on
Yes.
the, okay, yeah, no, okay. I can get with that. Now, so then transitioning to oil country. So how was that shift, and how did that come about?
So my last year in Oregon, I'd already decided it was time to get back to Texas, right?
Okay.
I'm a Texan. I'm actually glad that I got some experience in another
Yeah.
state, because it just gives you a different perspective. And, we hear all the time, well, those of us who are from here, we're very critical of ourselves, right?
Mhm.
When you go to another state and you realize, like, we're actually doing a lot of very good things,
Mm.
for kids in our education system. So I knew I wanted to get back, but I really thought about what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. I, had done large inner city urban for a long time. So was thinking I wanted to do something different, but didn't want to do a small district. So
Mm.
really just kind of weighed all these things in my head. And um, I did not know Scott Murray,
Mhm.
but I knew a lot of people that knew him and had so much love and respect for him as a
Yeah.
leader. And so when I saw there was a position in Ector County ISD open, I applied. I was like, maybe he'll hire me, and he did. And so I
That's
ended up getting to go work for him for 3 years.
that's awesome. So you guys have obviously done great work, and I think it's safe to say Dr. Muir is known as a very strong leader and innovator, somebody that's looking for to do education right, but also leverage all the resources that you possibly can. And I've watched a lot of his when he speaks, and never got a chance to meet him, but definitely somebody that's a great leader in the state. Now, how did it come about where you're in the interim? I want to hear like the story, the reaction. Like, give me the scoop on that.
Well,
I'm just putting you on the
you
spot. That's
you you know me well enough to know probably what my initial reaction was.
Oh yeah.
And so, it took me a minute to process, and I was like, wow, all right then, I'm going to be the interim superintendent of, Ector County ISD. So honestly, my initial thought was, I didn't want him to leave. So
Yeah.
my first reaction was, no, like, you can't leave. Like, you have to stay, because he's just such a good leader, and it was so good for our school system that my initial reaction was like, no, like, absolutely not. You can't leave. And so then, it took me a minute to process that he was leaving. And so just started thinking, like, wow, like, those are big shoes to fill, literally and figuratively, right? I'm like, wow, like, how in the world? But honestly, it's been great. He's amazing. And
Yeah.
so just being able to have him as a resource, and so to be able to call him, I mean, he's obviously been a mentor for 4 school years now. And so even in this role, just knowing he's there helps a ton. Great advice. And so any superintendent who has questions, I think he'd be a great person to call. But so, yeah, initial reaction was no, please don't go. And then
What did he
once-
did he like call you in the office? Did he sit you down? Was it a phone call? Did he tell everybody at once, or how did it like? Because I text you the same day, I think, and I didn't get a response. Like, oh no, she's probably freaking out or something.
something similar to that. I got a little heads up.
Yeah.
But it wasn't much.
Yes.
And I respect that too. That it was essentially a recommendation from him, right? Because he didn't get to name the interim superintendent, and so it was his recommendation, which I greatly appreciate and respect and admire, and still sometimes I'm a little bit shocked about it, but a very small heads up, because it was a very fast process, and which is probably good, because I didn't have a whole lot of time.
You didn't think about it.
Didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it. But yeah, so it's been great. It doesn't seem like it's been since August, but it's been since August, and we're heading into February.
Oh
And so
wow, it has been a good
has been.
minute to. Okay, that so yeah, half a semester.
Yes.
Wow, but everybody says that the good leaders are going to push you out of your comfort zone, and even when you're unsure, they're sure. And first of all, I have zero doubt or zero hesitation because I've known you and I knew you were extremely talented, but also extremely good with people, which I may not have been the best in that in Houston ISD, but you have those skill sets in there. I think would be great to serve as
Thank you.
not the interim, but the superintendent.
Thank you.
So very happy for you. I know it was a little whirlwind ride, but in that time, what are some of the things that have you've really enjoyed? Some of the challenges ahead, maybe.
I've really enjoyed getting to know our community better because, in a cabinet position, you're in your role, your specific role, and so you interact with community within that role.
Right.
So it's not as wide of a net, and so really enjoyed getting to know our community leaders. Been invited to a lot of things, to attend a lot of meetings and meet a lot of people, and so I feel like I've already formed some really good relationships.
Good.
So that's been the best part, honestly, is truly getting to know our community leaders. Challenges ahead are probably similar to every other district, just uncertainty and how our schools are going to be funded. And so that's really our focus and priority right now. I mean,
Sure.
we're obviously legislative session, and so hopefully we'll learn more soon. But that is my biggest probably challenge and worry is how do we continue to take care of staff and kids
Yeah.
with the funding uncertainty.
Yeah, I've been amazed that y'all have done a great job of recruiting because it's not an easy place to get to. There's not a huge airport close or whatever, so there is some of those considerations. But y'all been able to attract teachers. What do you think the secret of continuing to attract great teachers and great staff, great leaders, even though all districts are facing some of those financial burdens?
Growing our own. We have to grow our own. So we have a lot of different pipelines. We've got parent-to-teacher pipelines, working on several assistant principal and principal pipelines. And so really just growing our own. Also compensation.
Yeah.
We try to be very, I would say, attractive and competitive when it comes to compensation. We have strategic compensation, so we have a lot of stackable options for teachers. So we are an opportunity culture district.
Mm.
So we have multi-classroom leaders that are responsible for teaching and leading other teachers on their caseload or department, grade level, depending on what school level they're at. That's up to a $17,000 stipend.
Oh.
We're also a teacher incentive allotment district, so TIA. And so last year we had 44 teachers that made over $100,000.
Nice.
So I think our strategic compensation is also very attractive. We just created a principal incentive allotment.
I saw that, and I wanted to dig in. It's like you got to tell me that because that's very cool.
So we wanted to model it after the TIA. So it is very, very, very close to TIA. It is campus growth, 50% STAR, 50% MAP.
Okay.
And our top 15% of principals are rewarded. So very similar to teachers. We were very fortunate to get the funding from the Permian Strategic Partnership. And so they invest a lot in education in the Permian Basin. And so they have contributed $100,000 a year for the next 3 years for that. So we're able to compensate our top 15% of principals. And so last week we gave out $80,000 for principal incentive allotment, and it was our top 15%. So similar to
Really?
TA.
That's awesome, and that's such a great, for the right reasons. Obviously, we're trying to incentivize teachers and help financially as much as we possibly can. But there is that next group, right? Your leadership, your campus leadership, and even your district leadership. For as much as districts can get grief about, oh, we're top heavy, or your administrators are making too much money, and I would say, who are you going to support the campuses? Who's going to help lead the leaders and continue a cycle of excellent in a school district? And if you start like, oh, you got to pull back all the leadership positions, because you hear that everywhere, and it's just ridiculous. I think, but what y'all are doing is making it so that there is a path, but also the data to back up.
Yeah.
This is why we're doing it, because kids are achieving, and these leaders are a direct relationship to that achievement. So That's pretty cool. I would guess some districts have been calling and picking y'all's brain on how y'all arrange that.
Yes, get some questions, and everybody that's asked, I've said I'm happy to send you our PI handbook. So anything anybody wants, I'm happy to share.
Very cool.
Because any of us, all of us, if we can retain highly effective principals, you don't have a good school without a good principal,
That's right.
And so we need good principals, and so happy to share the work that we've done to help other districts retain their best principals.
So you've lived in different places. So from Houston to Oregon to now Odessa, how do you spend your free time? What are you doing? What are you doing to relax and to just like, you know, hang out, just decompress when you have the time?
Like you, history and athletics and sports, and so we watch a lot of sports. My husband and I have taken up golf, and so that's fun. But the athlete in me and the competitor in me, I get very frustrated. But then I have one good hole, and I want to keep playing because I figured it out. And then I have like 5 bad ones. So golf.
Y'all play now? Do y'all play together?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Yeah, I could. We tried a couple times.
Didn't work.
Well, for the I can't my temper level of it's hard and it's slow. So those two things not good for me. But I can ride on that cart like with the best of them. But
I can't believe you haven't like taken it up. You're an athlete, like you haven't gotten into it.
I need to, but it's almost like I feel like I'm giving up if I go to golf. Like I can't play basketball. Like that's the last
You can do both.
the last bastion. Like, all right, now everything's shot, the knees, the back. Let me go play golf. But no, I need to because it is a lot of fun when I go. But you gotta every day, or you can't get good at it. So I'm
That's
gonna
true.
suck for the whole rest
Yeah,
of my
I'm
life.
probably never going to be good at it, but it is fun.
So you play a little golf, watch a little sports. What's your favorite events to attend in Ector County? Like, is there one that you're like, you know what, not really sports or whatever, but just, man, I just love that event in the district?
I would say there's a lot. But what comes to mind first is every year when our 2 comprehensive high schools play each other in football. It is amazing.
Is it?
18 to 20,000 people, at a high school football game. It's electric. You just have to be there and be a part of it to see. But, crosstown rivalry, but it is a full stadium, standing room only most times. And so I look forward to that every year. Seeing our bands perform, seeing so many kids engaged. And so that's probably one of my favorite events a year because it's both schools, the entire community's there.
What are you most proud of in your time in Ector County?
The work that we've done to take care of our teachers, to retain them, to reward them, because that trickles down to kids, right? And so if we're retaining strategically our teachers, then kids are benefiting. So I'd say most proud of our pipeline work, our instructional development, leadership development, and just our investments in teaching and learning.
In 2025, Ector County will be, finish the sentence.
Innovative and strategic and continuing to move the work forward.
And led by full-time superintendent, Dr. Boyer.
Keeley Boyer, that'd be great.
Well, I appreciate you spending time. I appreciate your willingness to let me twist your arm and come on. But, obviously we've known each other for a long time and I've watched from afar all the great things that y'all are doing. Just super happy for you, super excited for your district and the kids there, and just continue the work. And if y'all are paying teachers that much, maybe I need to dust off my English, my Shakespeare. I was an English teacher, oddly enough.
We have a 9th grade English spot just for you.
That's me.
So you let me know.
That is me. We'll be rapping Shakespeare from every single day of the week. So it's been great, and continue your success.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You got it. If you like what you heard and saw, please subscribe, share, comment, and we'll see you next time on The Path Forward.